Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I'm your host, Joey DeMeglio, and the New York Rangers have been on a roll with 9 points in the last 5 games. That's 9 points out of a possible 10 points. They remain in third place in the Metropolitan Division behind the Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes. Joining me today is Stephen Pappas from Forever Blueshirts. He's a contributor over there. Stephen, thanks so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I'm enjoying the warm weather here in Louisiana. I know you guys have had some bitterly cold last couple of days. So it was 75 ish here yesterday. So I think I'm just gonna take the warm weather while it lasts.
Yeah, it's been getting really cold over here. Like it took a while too. What are we? Very beginning of February, and
Mhm.
it's just now starting to get like really cold, like 30, 20 degrees outside. Man, I went to the Rangers game right before the All-Star break, and I came back at the train station, and the front of my car, like it was like frozen. Like that's how cold it was
Oh,
outside. Yeah, so we're
yeah.
getting to that part now.
I remember being home for Christmas. That week was miserable as well. It was somewhere in the negatives in the wind chill, and I remember standing outside, and I'm like, I forgot what this was like.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I bet that the South weather is really nice right now. Yeah.
For the most part, that we do have our days where it's 25, 20. Believe it or not, it does get in the 30s around here, and then that's miserable because it's cold and it's wet for most of the time.
That stinks. Yeah, at least there's no snow up here. Like, so far, no snow, knock on wood. Like, we don't want that. We don't want any snow. We have to get to work and stuff like that. Everything's gotta be safe. Don't like it when it's icy out. Not good. Um,
No, not good.
yeah, yeah. But, anyways, we'll get into it. So the Rangers are on a roll right now. Like I said, 4-0-1 in their last five, 3 wins in a row. Really clicking on all cylinders. It seems like that game against Calgary. Were you able to catch that one?
Oh, from start to finish, I watched that whole thing, and
Yeah.
for those that didn't and have heard people say that it was probably one of the best of the year, I think I could co-sign that. To be able to come out of the All-Star break for really either side, and be able to be, both coaches will tell you it was the cleanest game ever played, but it was definitely crisper than you would think after having, especially in the Rangers case, a full 10 days off with the bye week and the All-Star break happening. Maybe some of those line changes that were made with Gallant, and they were talked about yesterday during the Vancouver game with Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad, which personally I think is a much better combination at the top than the Trocheck and Panarin experiment that they had during the year. Um, However, going back to that game, to be able to come out of the All-Star break, 3-4 minutes into the game, whatever it was, being able to get on the board with, I believe it was Chytil's first goal, and you mentioned we'll talk about him probably in a little bit later on in the show because how could you not? And having Halak play in net, I mean, we saw kind of what the fatigue of the All-Star game did to Andrei Vasilevsky in their first game back against the Florida Panthers. Gave up. I know the team gave up 7. I don't know how many of those he gave up, but so it was, obviously in hindsight, it was the right move to start Halak in that first game after the All-Star break with Shesterkin being out there. But I think at the time it was also the right move to make. And he didn't play particularly well. But I don't think he played to lose them the game as well. It's almost like a pitcher in baseball. You're supposed to you're not always there to win the game. You're just making sure you don't lose the game and give the rest of your guys a shot. And I think Halak definitely did that. And he's been phenomenal, the past 5 games before Monday. But at the same time, and I mentioned it yesterday, in these 2 games that the Rangers have had since the All-Star break, they have had a goal, I will say blatantly kicked in because I think it was kicked in, reviewed, and called a goal last night, an icing that should have been an icing that ended up in the back of the net. And then, Chytil getting dragged down right before the empty net goal and not being awarded the goal. And, obviously there's 30 seconds left. You would hope a manage you don't give one up, but anything can happen. We've seen in the NHL this year. And, they've won both of those games. So it's been a resilient bunch. And I think they have a very good chance at adding the deadline in the right way to become a possible Stanley Cup contender. Personally, at this time, I don't think that they are. I think they're wildly inconsistent to be a Stanley Cup contender. That being said, I'll never count out Igor Shesterkin. I'll never count out a hot goaltender come playoff time. And, say April comes around, rolls around, and all of a sudden just Shesterkin just decides I'm the best goalie on this planet. You never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the way the kid line is playing right now, that's got to be the norm. If the Rangers are going to be cup contenders, that has to be the norm. I know it seems like ridiculous, like the pace they're on right now is incredible. We haven't seen them do that since the playoffs last year. But if they're going to be considered cup contenders, I agree with you. That those guys need to be. This is what it needs to be forever. Like from now until the playoffs. And to your point about Halak, I kind of felt the same way. I was, if you were seeing that he was starting, you would be surprised, especially with me being at the last game before the All-Star break. They decided to go with Halak last minute, and then the first game back from the break, they also decided to start Halak, which was surprising. But I've learned over time to never question Benoit Allaire. Always listen to that guy. He knows. He knows. So I think they made the right choice there. That's a good point you bring up with Vasilevsky being a little slow in his first game back. Tampa Bay gave up 7 goals. Yeah. But yeah, Halak was fine in that game against Calgary. He made big saves. Wasn't perfect. Gave up 4 goals. I mean, that one goal that you said, the Mangiapane kick in, I mean, very clearly is a kick. Like those are the 2 rules that don't make any sense. It's the goaltender interference and the stink kicking motion goal. And then to even further your point is the icing rule. Like the icing, when do you call it? Do you call it at the blue line? Do you call it when the guy's at the hash marks? When do you call it? And why is it the linesman that's way farther away from the play that's making that call instead of the referee that's literally right in front of you?
Yeah, I mean it was the linesman at the near blue line that called icing, and it was the referee or linesman, whatever, at the red line at center ice that waved him off. I mean, it is what it is. You end up getting the 2 points, getting out of there with a win, but definitely made it a lot more stressful, which I'm pretty sure this team has been able to do all year, make everything as stressful as possible. But to your point as well, I think you're absolutely right when you talk about the kid line needing to be at the top of their game in the playoffs for them to be a Stanley Cup contender, and we saw it obviously last year. I will point out that Filip Chytil so far this year is on what is he at 19 goals this year, probably going to score somewhere in the realm of 25 to possibly 30. And if I told you at the start of the year Filip Chytil is going to score 30 goals, I think you'd call me insane. But at the same time, he at this point right now has 19 goals at a 4th line production rate. So to be able to bump up, he's averaging, I believe it's somewhere in the realm of 14 and a half minutes a night, which is nothing. And the hot streak that he's on right now for the jump in goals, but you've seen the play be driven by that kid line, by Chytil and by Kakko and Lafreniere, and Lafreniere starting to find his groove a little bit. He had a goal last night, obviously game winner against Calgary to start the year, or to start the second half. If that's a kid that finds his stride, I mean, that line just gets infinitely better. Kakko, is a puck controller, big body that'll shield you and create plays and create opportunities. He might not always end up on the score sheet. He's a good defenseman, defensive forward. And if you get a goal scorer like Chytil being set up by a playmaker in Lyers caliber, the confidence that he can get by playing with these guys, that's your second line. I mean, I love Chris Kreider more than, anybody on this planet. But, the Kreider, Trocheck, and Goodrow line needs to be your third line if the kids keep playing like this. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later on when we talk about the trade deadline and stuff like that. But I think there's definitely room to improve at that top 6, specifically on that top line right wing.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think the Rangers need 2 wingers, actually. I said this a couple weeks ago. I think they definitely need a scorer, and they need somebody that could skate really well. Like, honestly, I kind of was questioning the decision for why they sent down Brodzinski. Like, I thought that was, he was a good 4th liner. You need those bottom 6 forwards that could skate. Sammy Blais has not worked out as well this year as he did at the start of last year before he got injured, which is unfortunate because I liked him as a player. He showed potential with his skill set, and it seemed that he meshed well with the group of guys, but then that injury, kind of derailed him. So I'm thinking that Sammy Blaze on his way out, but the kid line. I was looking at their statistics over the last 5 games. I use natural stat trick a lot. They've only given up one even strength goal in the last 5 games, and it was that goal last night, the one that should have been called icing. And they've scored
Mhm.
7 goals. When they're on the ice, they have 7 goals, all of them by Heedle, and they've given up one even strength. Yeah, it was like 7-1, not all by Heedle because Lafreniere had a couple, I think. Lafreniere had one last night. Um,
I will say that the Filipino waiver wire fantasy pickup 2 weeks ago was probably the greatest move I've made so far this season.
oh yeah.
And he's just been, I mean, it's unreal. And unfortunately, it's creating some sort of problem for the Rangers down the line. Larry
Oh
Brooks wrote
yeah.
about it. I believe it was either last night or early this morning about what that means for Chytil at the end of the season. He's an RFA, so the Rangers do have his excuse me, his rights. But Buffalo didn't do them any favors in signing Dylan Cousins to believe it was 7 years, 7 million average annual value.
Mhm.
And as it sits right now, the Rangers are most likely going to have somewhere in that $16 million window in cap space come this year, and they got to sign Chytil, they got to sign Miller, and they got to sign Lafreniere, which you would assume Miller and Chytil would command somewhere in the realm of $13 to $14 million of that $16 million space. And for me personally, I don't think Lafreniere's proven enough yet in his career to earn anything more than a bridge.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's your $16 million right there, and, nowhere to go, which would mean that somebody would have to be on their way out. Larry mentioned Goudreau. He also mentioned a name that I would hate to see leave in Ryan Lindgren to fill up
Mhm.
cap space. And on the surface, it sounds insane. Why would Ryan Lindgren, why would the Rangers give up on a guy like Ryan Lindgren, especially if you let him walk you wouldn't let him walk in this scenario, but you would get value for him. But if you peel back the layers, at that point, you had Fox and you had Miller on the same line, Truba with Braden Schneider, and you're really just replacing Braden Schneider on that bottom pair. It's not the craziest thing in the world. It's the harsh reality that is the NHL, just in general with the hard cap, and something that makes it gives parity in the league, obviously, but at the same time, it penalizes teams for being able to draft and draft well. It's not the Rangers' fault that they were in the scenario where they have 4 guys that are on ELCs right now, or
Mhm.
inexpensive contracts that they've all decided to boom at the same time.
Yeah, and to your point about like the Heedle to Cousins comparison, I don't think that's a good comparison because Cousins is definitely he's probably getting more ice time than Heedle is. I'm looking at his ice time now, like he's gotten 18 minutes a night on here before. So like he's averaging this year 16 and a half minutes. This season he's got 43 points in 49 games. So his production is a lot higher than Heedle's. Heedle's on that hot streak right now. So I mean, if they're going to sign him, Heedle, I think like if they could get it done as soon as possible, like right now, I don't know how Heedle would be. His camp is willing to begin contract discussions. But if they could somehow lock him up in the $4.5 to $5 million range, that would be great. And I agree with you on Lafreniere. I've been saying that there's no way he's getting more than a bridge deal. He's got to be getting $2 to $2.5 million. It doesn't make sense to give him anything more than that, even for 1 or 2 years. I would say for him, along the lines of the Heedle or the Heedle and the Kako contracts, either 2.1 or 2.3 million for 2 years. Like that would make the most sense for me. Um, and for Lindgren, it would. I feel like the Rangers, if they were going to move Lindgren, they'd probably try like one of their prospect defensemen to see how they are working out because they do have Matthew Robertson in the system. They still have Zach Jones, but that experiment has kind of fluttered. They don't think that he's ready. If I had to make an assessment on Zach Jones, I'd say that the Rangers don't think he's ready to play NHL minutes. and that Ben Harper is just fine with where he's at right now.
Yeah, and we'll get to it obviously in the trade part of it, but I think you make a good point on the fact that they have a plethora of defensemen in the minor leagues. I mean, the defense part of the game is not where the Rangers are short at all in the organization, and I think that's also when we do get to the trade deadline talk, that's going to be assets that will be looked at by other teams. Is that depth in the defense, and are the Rangers willing to give up kind of top defensive prospects in some of these trades?
Right. So and if they trade Cap, it's not going to be. I would imagine it's not going to be like for Chikrin. Like they like this core. Like Miller has got to stay. Keandre Miller looks like he's going to be staple for the foreseeable future for the Rangers. He's been playing really well this season. I think this is his best year so far. He's kind of just taken whatever he was playing at, the level he was playing at in the playoffs, and at this point in time, since the Trouba helmet incident, where the Rangers have been killing it, he's taken his game to another level. Miller needs to stay, and if I don't think like a guy like Timo Meyer is going to end up on the Rangers. That's why, unless they flip him at the draft.
Yeah, I mean it's hard because I'm in the Timo Meyer camp. If you want to
I
if you
know.
want to turn this team
Yeah.
into a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, Timo Meyer is the guy. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the money just doesn't work. I mean, you would need to qualify $10 million. Rangers simply do not have that, and if
And
they
he
do
would
want to
accept that
qualify,
too. He would
exactly. And
definitely accept that.
if the Rangers do qualify that $10 million in the offseason, that means you're losing Chytil and you're losing somebody else. I mean, you're losing these guys for a Timo Meyer, and you know, is the risk of one guy worth the possible departure of 2 to 3? Probably not. Especially in with the possibility that you have of a Heedle and kind of what you've seen in Keandre Miller and possibly Lanier as well. The name that I've seen thrown out recently, Vladimir Tarasenko. There was a really good piece on in the article. I think it was Arthur Staple and one of the writers from St. Louis. We're talking about the possibility of a Tarasenko, and I think the cap hit in that regard is a lot more the realm of the Rangers' possibility, as well as Tarasenko's off two or three surgeries on his shoulder, and I think the return, or I guess the rate what the Rangers give up is a lot less than what it would be for obviously Meyer. And you're trading for Meyer, you're trading the house, you're trading everybody, everything of value in the organization that the San Jose Sharks would put their stamp on. But Tarasenko is still, he's a top line player. He's a top line right winger plugging into.
Hang on a second. We got some technical difficulties here. All right, we're back. We're back.
The internet is fantastic.
Oh, lovely.
Live.
All good. All good. That's what we. That's what we use the editing software for.
So just start back up, just right
Yeah,
back into what we are talking about.
yeah,
Yeah, so like we never missed a beat. Vladimir Tarasenko, I mean, I think is an option that the Rangers need to take a look at. I mean, he's a guy that'll play in that top pairing right wing, which is where they need to address the issue. And I love Jimmy Vesey. I think he's done a fantastic job in his second stint because his role's been different. We've expected a little bit less of him since he's come back this year than we did the first time that he was in the organization. But he's not a top line player. He's not a top 6 player. He's barely a top 9 player. I think he fits well in that fourth line. He's shown very very good skills this year at being able to play a solid defensive forward. He's shown flashes of being a bit of an offensive, that offensive game that we wish that he had when he first came up with the Rangers. I mean, specifically, the first 2 games since the All-Star break, he had a very patient play against Calgary that ended up on his stick and basically driving the middle of the ice. And Jay Markstrom really good save on him. And yesterday, basically almost the same play where he kind of held on to the puck, drove to the middle of the ice, and Spencer Martin made a pretty decent save on him there as well. So, in the regard of the asking price for Tarasenko, he's had those two or three surgeries on his shoulder. It sounds like that the shoulder won't be a problem in his career. His surgeon said that what they did is, he's all good. There shouldn't be any lingering issues. As a Mets fan, I'm, one to cower at, I guess, medical reports at this point. So it's tough. It's tough to hear somebody talk about, 3 surgeries later and down the line, they should be fine because $350 million almost went to a guy that might not have an ankle in 2 years. But, I think he's a guy in Tarasenko that is a plug and play guy immediately in that top line. And I think, there's obviously going to be that Russian connection with him and Panarin. So, we'll see if they would gel well together. From a return for St. Louis, it looked somewhere in the ends of a first-round pick, which the Rangers have 2 of, or possibly a second. I don't know if I'd give up a first for Tarasenko just based on the injury history and he's got the ability, but he hasn't really shown it this year. He's struggled this year. That being said, everybody on the Blues has really struggled this year. The same goes for Kane. Everybody's going to rag on Patty Kane for having kind of abysmal numbers this year, but how do you have non-abysmal numbers on a team that doesn't look like they want to be on the ice together every night in Chicago? It's tough. But Back to Tarasenko, I think, it's a high-level prospect and probably a first or second rounder. Most likely, I would wish for a second-round pick and, a possible Zach Jones or Matthew Robertson, just based on the fact that where are they going to go? They don't really have a spot right now in this organization with Keandre Miller, with Adam Fox, with Ryan Lindgren locked up. And obviously you got the captain in Jacob Trouba in your top 4. And you really don't, Braden Schneider as well. I can't believe I forgot to mention him. And, we've seen the experiment of Jones and Schneider and playing them on the third pair. There's not third pair defensemen. They're supposed to be guys that are up in the lineup and being able to drive the play and being able to be on first power play or second power play and kind of run the show there. So I think it would be a good change of pace for them. The Rangers get a guy that they can plug into their top 6 and specifically on that first line right wing. And they get him at a cheaper cost than, say, Patrick Kane, or obviously you can get anything cheaper than Timo Meier at this point. But I think it's, you're not dipping too far from the talent pool in that regard. And just really quickly, I think Patrick Kane as well is a name that, they've talked about him too much for it not to be, where there's smoke, there's fire. I think from what has been talked about, I think Chicago might be asking a little bit too much for a guy like Patrick Kane, who's 34 and, having a rough season. But I think it's obviously very possible that Kane ends up injured into this. Then it's very possible that Kane ends up, still Chicago Blackhawk at the end of it. But we will definitely see come trade deadline time If somebody ever tells you they know where each team is going to go, team is going to trade for who, they're lying. They got no idea because the trade deadline is very hectic.
Yeah, the team's got to take their time to see what the best offers are. So yeah, it's definitely not like a team that's going to be like, all right, I need to get this done right here, right now on February 9th. Um, they're gonna wait and see. I think the Blackhawks are. I think that was. I think it was Sarah Volley or Pierre LeBrun that was saying that the Blackhawks will give like 7 to 10 days to teams to submit offers. Um, so like that is, it's not that's proof that it's not going to happen overnight. And I like the idea of Tarasenko plus Barbashev. I like that package because it addresses two needs for the Rangers. They need, like I said, they need two wingers to upgrade, and Barbashev is a really good middle six forward, and Tarasenko is a proven 30 goal scorer, 30 to 40 goal scorer, and if he stays healthy, big question if then he would be a really good option for the Rangers on the ideally with Panarin and Zibanejad. You would have like a line of Panarin, Zibanejad, and Tarasenko. That would do damage, and then VZ would go down to like the third or the fourth line, whatever, what have you. And then that would be ideally effective. And then the thing about what you're saying, I'm also a Mets fan, and I get the Correa thing hurts. But also Tarasenko would be a rental. I don't think the Rangers, if they trade for Tarasenko, I don't think there's any chance that they bring him back next year. It would just be for this year, and that's it.
Yeah, and I don't think the Rangers are really in a spot right now, cap wise, to kind of do
Yeah.
anything other than a rental.
Yep.
It's going to be hard for them to sign anybody long term with the guys that they do have to sign. So I mean, at that point, why don't you say go after Timo Meyer if you know you're not going to re-sign him next year? But a guy like that, you should be re-signed. Tarasenko, Kane could be good rentals. Mentioned the Barbashev. I think they're more focused on that top six, that first line, because if you move VC off the top line, your fourth line is either be him down there or Goodrow down there, and it makes that fourth line that much better. Where I see them making another move could be in that depth defense role. I won't say Justin Braun's name because we tried that experiment last year. We saw how that worked. But a guy like Justin Braun, I think Ben Harper's done a great job this year at the role. I think he has been abysmal in the first two games that they've played since the All-Star break. He was noticeably bad against Calgary, which is not good of your sixth defenseman to be noticeably bad. And it was noticeably bad last night. Some bad turnovers, some bad decision making. You saw he got benched for a majority of that third period. I think the one injury away on the blue line from having a Libor Hayek and Ben Harper third pairing. So I would hope a depth defenseman is kind of where, because they're not going to make one. It's not just going to be a Tarasenko and call it a day. They're not one player away from winning a Stanley Cup. They're not one player away from being a contender in the Stanley Cup. You see how much depth shines when comes Stanley Cup playoff time. And, obviously the playoffs aren't set right now, but if you're going to, take a look, the Rangers are kind of pulling away a little bit from the Pittsburghs and the Washingtons of the world. The Devils are pulling away from the Rangers a bit, but not pulling away from Carolina. So do you start addressing the issue of, how do we beat New Jersey? How do we Pittsburgh? And what beat them a lot last year and what's beat them a lot this year has been speed. So being able to contain speed and being able to possibly counterpunch with speed should be a high priority come the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's definitely a question that they're going to start having to address. And to your point about Gallant benching Harper, people won't acknowledge that because he was on the hot seat earlier this year when the Rangers had their struggles. He was on the hot seat, but no one is giving him credit for putting the kid line back together and re-energizing Lafreniere. Lafreniere has played the best hockey he's played since the very beginning when he was on Panarin's line. He's playing the best hockey right now with Chytil and Kakko beside him than he has throughout the rest of the season. And it wasn't the scratching that did it. I think it was once he put Lafreniere back with Chytil and Kako, he's played significantly better. He's so into the games now, like he's throwing body checks. I saw at the end of the first period against the Canucks, he threw a hit on Elias Pettersson of all players. And he forced a turnover. Not really like he didn't do anything with the puck, but he just hit him, right? Like when he is on his game, he's throwing body checks, he's creating turnovers, he's making something happen out there. When he was struggling, he was doing none of that. Um, and also about Harper, he benched Harper. He sees it. They see it. They see that, he's not the greatest. I think the Rangers cap situation is the reason for why they don't have a guy like Jacob Chikrin or anybody else out there that's a significant improvement. They can't afford it. So they got to go with somebody that's, fine, like like a Braun. And Harper for the most part has been fine as a third pair defenseman. Just these past 2 games have been really bad. And you look at his stats, and they are bad. The pair is between Schneider and Harper the first 2 games back has not been good since the All Star break. Um, so that's something to monitor. If it continues to be that way, I think Chris Drury won't hesitate to make a trade for or make a call up to like Robertson. But I would think a trade for like a Wallman or somebody cheap, a cheap option out there, or another Braun, um, would be the move to go for him. Um,
Yeah. And for me, I mean, going back to your point about Gallant, I think the stubbornness that we've seen through him for him as a head coach of this team has kind of annoyed some people. It's definitely it's annoyed me from time to time. I mean, yes, he has put the kid line back together, but he still does some things that you see throughout a game. And a good example was last night, and he's done it countless times so far this season in starting the fourth line in the offensive zone after a team has iced the puck.
I can't stand that.
Especially last night's example, the kid line was fresh on the ice. Obviously, has been the best line so far since since the All-Star break has started. They're fresh off the ice in an offensive zone faceoff, and they throw the fourth line out there. That being said, Elias Pettersson last night kicked the hell out of whoever it was in the faceoff dot all night. I think it was Zibanejad was like 1 of 15 or 3 of 15 or something like that, or something really bad. But I get from time to time that you need to get a matchup out there. And Trocheck, say what you want about, obviously his connection with Panarin this year hasn't been great. His point production has been okay. He's a guy that comes in and wins faceoffs, and I think that's an underrated part. Under Dan Quinn, the Rangers were an abysmal faceoff team, usually if not last to last, and if not second to last, third to last under Dan Quinn. So they've gotten better in that regard. It's kind of them being able to kind of set the pace of play, which at points last year was lost because they were never winning faceoffs and they were never being able to get within the system of a game. But I think Gallant has been able to adjust better. I still think he's got some head scratchers. Notably talking about not developing. We're not here to develop. We're here to win. And good coaches do both. So it's he's done enough. I'll say that. I think he's done enough.
Yeah, we're not here to develop. We're here to win games. And then he called out David Quinn for not developing the players. That was hilarious. I thought that was great.
Exactly.
Honestly, like I agree. I've said it on the show before. Like that was David Quinn's job, and he didn't do a good job of that. He benched his younger players instead of putting them in spots to succeed. But also I gotta say, like that fourth line was awful last night, and they made a change. They sent Will Cooley down. The Rangers no longer have a full roster. A lot of people were saying, okay, if they still have a full roster, there's got to be a move coming. And I was thinking, okay, Cooley's up here because he earned his time. He played well in the AHL and he played well in the NHL for those couple games that he was with the team before the All-Star break. So I think they were just giving him another look. And last night didn't go as well for him as it did the previous 3 games, but they gave him a chance. And now they're back to accruing cap space, so they'll have like about $6.7 million in cap space come the trade deadline, and then they could free another 1.5 ish million if they get rid of Sammy Blay, who, like I said, hasn't worked out for them. And then there's another question is like, what's going to happen with Kravtsov? Are they gonna use him in the lineup, or are they going to use him as a trade piece? Because we were talking about Tarasenko, Barbashev. I think if you package them together, I wouldn't mind giving up Vitaly Kravtsov, even though they're both players that the Rangers would be receiving are rentals. Um, you're not really using Kravtsov right now. He's on the bench. He's in the press box. He's too good to play in Hartford, and for some reason, Gerard Gallant doesn't want him in the lineup. So either use the kid or get rid of him. You could get something good back for him rather than give up a first round pick in this year's draft. I'd rather give up Kravtsov than one of this year's first, because this year's draft is pretty stacked. A lot of
Mhm.
people saying there's good players up and down the entire way. So it might be a bit of a hot take. Uh, not the purpose of the show. Ice Cold Takes is the show, but trading Kravtsov over a 2023 first round pick. Uh, I guess that's my Ice
Yeah,
Cold
I
take.
don't. I think if you're gonna package Barbashev in a deal like that, then I mean Barbashev is off the top of my head, I believe 25 or 26 years old. But that I mean you got to get value back if you want to get value in return. So if you're gonna package Barbashev and Tarasenko, I wouldn't mind seeing Blay and Kravtsov going the other way. Would St. Louis take that? They would. I don't see. I don't think Tarasenko's got the same value as he did a couple of years ago. I still think he's got high value, but I don't think it's the still elite value of must have a first round pick for him, especially with the shoulder injuries he's had in the past. And, we've kind of harped on it. So I think if you want to package Barbashev, that makes them a much better team than obviously just having Tarasenko. And I think the most obvious statement that could be made, if you package two pretty good players together, it makes your team that much better. But you got to make the return worth it in St. Louis's regard. And they've done deals before. Sammy Blay and probably Nevich. Will they take Sammy Blay back? And there's a lot of questions. There's just a lot of questions going into the trade deadline, and I think there's more questions going into this offseason. But we're way too far away to think about the offseason. That's not for us to decide what happens. It's Chris Drury and management's decision to make. So it should be an interesting ride. And unfortunately, the NHL is penalizing teams for drafting players that perform.
That trade would be like if the Rangers do and the Blues end up trading like Tarasenko and Barbashev for Blay and Kravtsov, then that entire trade tree is just the Blues got Buchnevich and Kravtsov for 20 games of Tarasenko and Barbashev, which is
Yeah,
nuts.
well,
That's an insane return for the Blues.
exactly. What about trading, Sammy Blay and a second round pick for Pavel Buchnevich?
Right.
Why don't we just make the trade full circle and just the Blues or the Rangers gave up Buchnevich in a second for Blay, or one of the two was the Blues giving up
Yeah.
Blay in a second. So the Rangers give up Blay in a second, and they get Buchnevich back. We'll see if we could go full circle on that trade, because that's a right winger that'll make your team a lot better.
Oh yeah, for sure, but they just couldn't afford it. I think the Rangers are really looking at Othman as the option there. They're hoping that he comes in and is that player that they're looking for. They seem to be really high on him. But currently, as it stands, I think the top 9 combinations, the line combinations, seem to be working with Panarin and Zibanejad. You had mentioned that the switch of putting Panarin with Zibanejad has been better than Panarin with Trocheck. And I think it works out too for two reasons. Panarin and Zibanejad skill sets match, and Kreider and Trocheck are more of those north-south, you know, let me dig a hole in the ice, skate up and down the ice. Like
Yeah.
last night's goal against the Canucks, perfect example. Miller feeds Trocheck off the boards, and Kreider jumps in on the rush, goes straight to the net, to the back post, and Trocheck sends a no-look pass over to him, and Kreider just buries it. Perfect. That's how you play.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Rangers need
that's a
more of
goal.
that too.
Yeah, that's a goal that we've seen Kreider kind of flub in the last couple of games, specifically the Toronto game where he was, on the goal line and somehow, the puck didn't go in. But Kreider's had a good year. Obviously, he's not going to score 50 like he did last year or whatever it was he had last year, 52.
Yeah.
He's done what he's done what he's had to do. If you told me Chytil's going to, tease 30 goals this year, I'd take that every time. And Zibanejad's done his thing on the power play. He scored another one last night at even strength. They're starting to find stuff offensively. They're starting to find kind of their groove, and guys like Chytil and Lafreniere. I said it after the Calgary game with Lafreniere. It was great that he scored the overtime goal. Now, how do you build on it? He built on it with a hardworking goal against Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
If the two of them can find a stretch down the street, find a streak down the stretch, then this is a team that could possibly gun for that number 1 seed in the Metro, or the number 2 in the Metro, because then you have 9 forwards that are top 6 anywhere else. I mean that wholeheartedly. If Lafreniere can jump into a more productive role, which in the first 2 games he's done a good job at.
Yeah, that would be nice if the Rangers could get home ice in the playoffs. If everything stays the same, it's looking like the Rangers are going to play the Devils in the first round, right?
I hate it. I don't like
I
it.
know.
I don't like the matchup.
I know. It's going to be. I don't like that matchup either, man. Like that scares me. That scares me. The games have been so entertaining, but like when you're following the team as closely as like we do, it's not a great matchup, because the Devils they're just as young as the Rangers, and they're hungry too, like because they've never been to the playoffs before. So that could very easily become a 7-game series, and at that point
young.
You're worn down.
Yeah, the Devils are young, dumb, and quick, and Quick has been able to kind of stifle the Rangers a lot this year. That being said, on that Devils side, Jack Hughes went down, is out week to week. So that'd be interesting to see how that team responds to that, because he's kind of been the heart and soul of that team for the whole season. Correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere in the realm of 30 goals, if not there, pretty close.
Oh, yeah, he's above
60,
30 goals. I think he's got 35.
35
Yeah.
goals, somewhere in the realm of 65, 70 points. So he's been their best guy all year. So we'll see. The Devils' goaltending shouldn't be as good as it is, but has been as good. We'll see. I mean, I'm all for Rangers Devils in the playoffs. I just don't think it's a great matchup for the Rangers this year.
Yeah, especially if they go after Timo Meier, if the Devils trade for Timo Meier, that is gonna suck. Like for the Rangers, that puts them over the top. Honestly, that's somebody I think they would be able to lock up long term too.
In the same way that Meier makes the Rangers a cup contender, I think Meier makes any team really. It's a buyer at the deadline, a cup contender. He's that good. He's a good goal scorer. He's a good facilitator. He's a great skater. He's a strong guy. He's a full package, and you're getting him at 28. Obviously, you got cap space. I'm pretty sure the Devils do. They don't really, off the top of my head, have a large contract on their books, like a Trouba or a Fox or Panarin type of deal that sort of hinders it. Which, I mean, other than Trouba, I would think the contracts are worth what they're paying everybody. That's a discussion for a completely other time. But yeah, Meier makes any team that he's on a cup contender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a good point you brought up before about the goaltenders. Like if it is a Rangers Devils first round matchup, then you'd have to do whatever you can to make it hard for the goaltender. Like you got to get to the middle of the ice against the Devils. Like honestly, I have more confidence in the Rangers defense than the Devils defense. And then the goaltenders they've been average. They've done enough for them. Significant improvement for the Devils since last year. That's what they were looking for. Is if they had good goaltending, they would have been a good team last year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: they're a good plus minus, a good goal differential team. They've had a very good season with not being scored on. I believe it's somewhere in the 120s right now. They've given up in goals, they've not given up a ton of goals, and whether that be the defense or the offense, it's hard to argue. The Devils have been a good team this year.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I want to see the Rangers and the Devils play, but I don't want to see it happen in the first round. That's what I would want to happen. Like
As
the
long as it's not
yeah.
Toronto.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I think for improvements, for the Rangers, north-south speed, the fourth line's got to get a little bit better too. I think. I looked at statistics before the last two games that since the All-Star break. The Rangers had Cooley, Lucian, and Sammy Blais as their fourth line. Their metrics were so bad. Below each of them, like scoring chances, shots for, shot attempts, expected goals, all of it was like below 30%. 30%. Average like 50% is where you want to be. They're at like 25, 30%. And when Gauthier was in the lineup with Cooley and Lucian, it was like 50, 60, 70%, even 80% possibly for those same statistics, which is insane. I think the Rangers desperately need to put Gauthier back in the lineup. And if they could make a move for like a Tyler Mott, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a catch-22, obviously, when it comes to Sammy Blais. If you're trying to trade him, you can't kind of bury him as a healthy scratch. You got to show his value. I think he's done enough since being in the lineup. I don't think he's been abysmal. He's been, you know, he started the brouhaha on Monday night with Lucic, so with a clean hit. I mean, it's fourth line. I mean, they're not really going to be out there to score goals. They're just out there to prevent being scored on. Unfortunately, they were scored on yesterday, so that's a bad look. But they're just kind of usually your third line's your energy line. The Rangers got a different energy line than the kid line. So your fourth line needs to be your energy line, and your grind the hell out of you the rest of the night line. And I think they've done a halfway decent job doing that. Cooley did a good job, who was up here, of being that energy guy. And Lucian, I forgot he was on the team, to be honest with you. He's been, not very impactful. I think if there's been one guy on that fourth line that has basically been doing cardio, being the team, it's kind of Lucian. He hasn't, I don't remember him taking a shot on goal. I don't remember him throwing a hit. I don't remember, a lot of things about him. So I think Blais been doing his part. I think Lucian, in my opinion, would be a guy out. Gauthier, you're right. I think Gauthier doesn't get a fair shakedown from time to time. That being said, it's not like he's lighting the lamp every night. From time to time. It's every 2 to 4 possible weeks where he's ends up on the score sheet. So he gives you more chances. I don't think he obviously ends up with more points than a guy. I guess more than Sammy Blais, because he gets in general. But yeah, it's a lot.
The fourth line doesn't need to score goals. I agree with you. They don't need to score goals just as long as the puck isn't pinned in their own end for like long stretches, like every time they are out there. That can't happen. Hockey's like a momentum-based game, especially in the playoffs. And when you go from the first line to the second line to the third line, and you're hogging the puck in their end in the offensive zone, just have the fourth line keep the puck out of the defensive zone. Just make them run around for like 30, 45 seconds, however long their shift is. Throw a couple body checks in there. You don't need to score a goal, but you just can't give up chances as much as they've done in those two games since the end of the All-Star break. Like, that needs to be an improvement. I'm not looking for Gauthier to score, even though he gets hella opportunities. And he gets so many glorious chances in front of the net that he can't bury, but he gets chances nonetheless, and he creates them himself. He draws penalties, he hits, he does whatever. He's a good forechecker. That's the big thing with the fourth line. They just need to be in your face. Don't let the opposing defenders breathe. Make it hard on them. They don't need to score. They just need to make it rough on the opponent. The other guys like Panarin and Zibanejad, they'll do all the heavy lifting. Chytil and Kidline, those guys will do the heavy lifting.
Now, I remember I was at the game in Dallas this year where Chytil scored that. Gauthier scored that wild goal, Wood coming out, and almost an impossible angle from Gauthier. So he's definitely got abilities. He's definitely got potential, but I think it's more in that fourth line. role where you just need him to be not a defensive liability and be able to drive play when needed. And I think he can do that. I think he deserves a shot, but I also think that Blaise playing for a tryout for teams that want him right now.
Yeah, and if the Rangers could make that trade like that we were talking about for Tarasenko and Barbashev, it would ideally push down VZ and Goudreau to the fourth line, and then you would have VZ, Goudreau, Gauthier, and I'd say that's as much of that's the most reliable fourth line you could possibly have, right? Like Gallant loves Goudreau, Jimmy VZ's been a terrific defensive forward all year, and Gauthier has been great on the offensive side in terms of creating chances, throwing body checks, drawing penalties, making stuff happen. Goudreau could win you faceoffs and stuff like that. He's good at both ends of the ice. He could chip in offensively here and there, but VZ and Goudreau are not top six players. I think you said that earlier. But in that spot, I don't know if Glant would end up doing that. It would be perfect for the Rangers though if they could make that happen.
Yeah, I definitely don't see VC as especially a first line player on a Stanley Cup contending team.
Also, like we've kind of gone through like these rumors like about Panarin and liking those gritty players that go into the boards. We still don't know if that's true or not, but those guys, like I mean, VZ doesn't look completely out of place on the top line. It's just they need points. They need guys that could score points that could put the puck in the back of the net. VZ's not one of those guys, and I think Zibanejad, Panarin, and Tarasenko would be a fairly good combination.
Yeah, that's a line that could win you some games and get you some. It's a lot of experience in the playoffs as well. I mean, Panarin's got his experience in the playoffs. Zibanejad's had his, and Tarasenko's won a Stanley Cup. So it's a line that has a possibility of being, being a quality line come playoff time. Like I said earlier, it's all speculation right now until a deal gets done. There's a plethora of things that could happen between now and the trade deadline, or if a trade is even made. So we will just sit back and see what we got.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see what happens with Chris Drury. Like injuries, it's the biggest thing you have to look out for, and that's why I don't think the Rangers are going to go after Patrick Kane. I don't think they want him as an option.
Yeah, and we've mentioned it already. You could say the same about Tarasenko with the shoulder injury. It sounds like they shouldn't be an issue with him. But I think the focus on Patrick Kane has shifted towards Tarasenko in the last couple of days, and I'm all right with it. I'm completely okay with it. I think he's a guy that makes the team better. I think he makes them obviously at the right price. You don't want to give up too much. I think it makes them a team that is should be contending for another spot in the conference championship at least.
A little less than a month away from the trade deadline. We should start to see some at least minor trades happen. We already saw Bo Horvat trade. That was the first domino to fall. There's still Meyer, there's still Tarasenko, there's still Patrick Kane out there. Who knows if they're gonna trade O'Reilly, if Jacob Chikrin's gonna get traded. It should be an eventful trade deadline day. There's a lot of things that could happen. So what would you say? Like, what would you if you had to predict like a timetable? When would the next big trade piece fall? If you had to say, how long?
Oh Lord, we're looking at March 3rd as the trade deadline. I would say post Super Bowl. I think nothing gets done this week. Yeah, saying that, we're gonna get off this call and we're gonna see Meyer somewhere. We're gonna see Kane somewhere, but Lewis flipped Bo Horvat because he didn't like the contract. I don't know, but we'll. I think after the Super Bowl, it started to heat up. I think in that final week before, maybe not on March 3rd, but the week before March 3rd, we can see some trades being made. Very interested to see where Meyer goes, and always interested to see what the Rangers do because. I think they've got a chance at this deadline, especially at this deadline more than last year's deadline, to make a team a cup contender that they weren't. I didn't think they were going into the playoffs last year.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. I'm excited. This is always like when your team is in it at this time to see like the big names moving different places. It's always exciting as a fan. So I
Yeah,
can't wait
just
for
not Eric
Seattle.
Stahl.
Oh
Just
yeah,
don't go
yeah,
after Eric Stahl.
yeah. Oh my gosh, you had to go there, man. Yeah, that was a bad one. That was a bad one. Yeah. Or go after Keith Yandel and then only play him on your third pair the following year. And
Exactly.
watch as he nonchalantly puts up 50 points.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, I like Yandel too. I always talk about it on the show. I like that trade. That one it didn't end up working out though. It didn't end up working out.
No.
And then the Eric Stahl one was horrible. That's terrible, terrible. Um, but yeah, Steven, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Ice Cold Takes listeners. We'll see you guys next week.